Hey folks, welcome to part 2 of our Kiss and Motley Crue.
Yeah, I've been getting my shoulders rubbed in the corner by my physio trainer, but the fucking who's the old guy that Rocky has?
A trainer.
Come on, Rocky. Come on, you gotta get back out there.
If I had to cut Dave's eye so you could see.
had to bleed him.
I've just been out the back with a bunch of prostitutes.
You did take a bit of a fucking scalp early on with the merchandising.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So we're not going to fuck around. We're going to get right into this. So just to recap, in case you haven't read the title, this is our 5th fucking birthday, and this is Kiss versus Motley Crue. Who's better?
Yeah, so Kiss versus Motley Crue,
completely objective,
dates back to one of our earliest episodes. It's been a long-running grudge match in this podcast, in particular between David and myself, although it was Mark that sort of lit the touch paper.
Yeah, it was
as
me.
It turns out, in that interview with Jonah. But yeah, we're trying to settle it once and for all. Go back, listen to the first episode. There was a lot of good points made by myself. David said some stuff.
Now this episode's gonna be weird because last time we were trying to win points by saying sold more or more songs or whatever, but this time it's about
it's more subjective, right?
Yeah,
well, yeah, but also I think that when we get points, we're actually going to get points taken off us.
Yeah, this is why I was annoyed at him not awarding points for the bangers round.
I wouldn't worry about it so far, right? Just wouldn't worry about it so far.
So we did a bangers round, and I thought I was going to score really highly in that. Mark sort of called it even. I just think that's okay, fuck it. I'm not going to question the officials. We don't have VAR in this podcast, okay? But yeah, so I'm advocating for Kiss. David is advocating for Motley Crue. Mark, as the adjudicator of this debacle, how would you sum up the events of episode 1?
I'd say there were some great points made on both sides, and you know what? I think this has been really interesting. Like, it's been really interesting to hear your takes, and Dave's a lot more passionate than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, considering I don't even like Motley Crue, I'm really going for it here.
Don't give it away.
No, but I do. I don't like them, but they've got some total bangers.
You don't want to take a bullet.
Over the last 20 years, I've listened to maybe Motley Crue like maybe 500 times, single songs, and I've listened to Kiss about 30 times until this week because I just like them more, and now we get to talk about all the other shit.
Okay, so
very quickly, I mean, given that this is episode 2, please go and subscribe. Christmas is coming. We've got a record club. With the record club, if you subscribe, we buy the stuff direct off the bands, digital and analog. They get loads of money for it. We get money to subsidise the podcast. We've been going for 5 years, and as much as it sounds like we're just having a jolly, I'm sitting here with a bundle of fucking notes. I did at least a full-time job in this week, so we really appreciate you giving us some financial support as it gets towards Christmas, the season of goodwill.
We've also got to buy a bottle of port for us for our Christmas,
for the Christmas
coming
party.
Up,
we have an even more debauched Christmas special where we take questions from the audience. So please go on any of the socials, Mark, Instagram,
Facebook, Twitter,
Twitch, Flap,
Unsung Pod. That's what you're looking for.
Gulp.
That's the handle you're looking for.
Just at us in any of those things. And if you can't afford the record club, that's a shame. Feel bad for you, but you could also give us £4 for the normal membership.
A pint, less than a pint.
Less than a pint. It's like a fucking half pint now. Especially if you go to the places that Dave hangs out. And but yeah, I mean, £4 and you get admitted to the kind of AAA pass thing on Facebook, which is really good because we get to chat and people suggest episodes and you get a lot of direct input into the content of the episodes. Anyway, that's that. We've got our breaths. Our trainers have patched up Dave's eye, they've rubbed my thighs, and we're good to go.
So we have 2 rounds left.
Yep.
2 proper rounds.
The real important ones as well.
Yeah.
So we have Cultural Legacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think will be a close one, actually.
Yep.
And I don't.
Notoriety, Madness, and Lower.
Shit.
Yeah, but I think that will be. I think you'll win that one because it's going to take points off
I'm taking
for all
points
the shit
off.
that
I'm
we
taking
get.
points off that one. Yeah,
that's true.
So let's start off on a high note and we'll careen towards destruction, right? We'll go with cultural legacy. So this is one that I am going to just like count. I'm just going to count this on the fly. This one, okay? This is like much like the bangers round. This is not one that I've really done much in the way of scoring for anyway. But I want to hear your guys' takes on it.
Okay, well, I'll start because to me, I think Kiss are obviously iconic, and we've talked about their fucking cultural legacy in terms of the visuals, and everybody knows the face paint, and everybody knows the fucking star guitar, and everybody knows fucking Kiss as a rock band. Even though they actually, when you talk to them, they probably don't know that many songs. But as a product, Kiss is perfect. But when you actually dig deep, you're like, oh, has Kiss had an iconic biography that defined a decade of debauchery? No. Have Kiss had a sex tape that, you know,
broke the internet before the internet,
and was on, you know, front page of all the tabloids in the 90s? No. Has Kiss got a fucking Netflix special movie in the last 3 years with Pete Davidson in it and fucking Machine Gun Kelly? Like, that, those are A-listers doing, you know, a big budget movie. It was also shit, but it was a big budget movie 40 years later, or 30, 40 years later, because Motley Crue, like, on the subconscious, represent something that's, you know, really interesting, really weird, and really forbidden, I guess. And we've talked, you know, they've got the TV series as well, the Pam and Tommy, and that's on, you know, as a big budget, proper TV series, whereas Kiss are just Kiss. Kiss are a band. So I think it seems obvious that Kiss have a bigger cultural legacy, but then when you actually look at it, what are people talking about more right now? I would argue Motley Crue. And it's something to do with nostalgia and looking back at the 80s, and maybe it's just to do with the fact that you can't do any of that shit anymore. And I mean, thank God, thank fuck. But I mean, it's total escapism. Motley Crue lived this sort of fantasy life in the 80s, and people are like, I can't believe that. And it is like, when you read the dirt, it's more interesting than a lot of novels, because they did shit that you just wouldn't think about writing. It is stranger than fiction, or stupider than fiction.
On the dirt in particular, for me, is as a work of literature, I suppose, is quite interesting. It's co-written, ghostwritten, probably
as a work of fiction
by Neil Strauss, who also co-wrote / ghostwrote Marilyn Manson's autobiography, which is also probably just as depraved, and that's just one fucking man,
and probably just as untrue.
I mean, so I think, one of the literary devices that I like in it a lot is that it's written from different perspectives, and I think that gives it a real feeling of authenticity, which a lot of other autobiographies don't do. And whether they wrote it themselves or whether Neil Strauss wrote it, like, each chapter that they write really embodies the voice of that person. I think that's a pretty, I mean, I'm talking about purely from a literary point of view. I think it's a really well written book, obviously, with a lot of really interesting things done in it from a literary perspective. Some of the stories are probably fake, some of them are probably real. I don't know, we can get into that, I suppose. But Kiss's cultural legacy, Chris?
I mean, Kiss's cultural legacy, as I said in the first episode, I see a lot of parallels with WWE. I think they took music to a level of theatrics that nobody had attempted, or they didn't, you know, invent makeup. That was, you know, arguably Arthur Brown and certainly Alice Cooper had a big part in that, but they maximalised it. They didn't invent pyrotechnics, they didn't invent any of that, but they brought all of these things into one, and they had all these stupid little gimmicks, you know, like bat wings and flying around the stage and fucking
breathing fire
and a big tongue and all this stupid shit. And it was a circus. I mean, it's interesting that they've got an album called Psycho Circus and they reference that kind of stuff all the time. It is. Kiss is a rock and roll circus. And bands like Marilyn Manson and bands like Rammstein and bands like Motley Crue wouldn't exist without Kiss. Kiss helped make Motley Crue. Motley Crue musically, as I said in the first episode, completely plagiarised Judas Priest, but they aesthetically, to a large extent, plagiarised a sort of, I don't know, somewhere between Kiss and Led Zeppelin. Like it's weird.
And Alice Cooper.
And yeah, wee bits of Alice Cooper, minus the sort of quasi-satanic sort of comedy shit.
I mean, I think Nikki Sixx is on record as saying that, you know, that was a big, like the theatrics of rock and roll was a big influence on, well, glam, I suppose, as well, which is what they were, when Kiss were. So it totally makes sense.
What's an interesting consideration is that during the 80s, there was an entire movement of excess in the west coast of the States, especially in like LA, California. And I mean, if you watch The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2 by Penelope Spheris, it's an incredible account of these deluded young guys who were quite androgynous. You know, there's dozens and dozens of these bands that sound the same. I say it's quite androgynous, yet fucking horribly fucking misogynistic and sexually predatory is the perfect word. And there were a lot of people really willing to engage with that and encourage it. A lot of them female as well. But Motley Crue were really just part of the pack. I'm not saying that their sales were not exceptional. They weren't the biggest. I mean, you know, Guns N' Roses and things like that, but they were certainly up there. But what I think Motley Crue is a masterstroke is that in hindsight, they've sort of retro-written themselves into history with like things like The Dirt. The Dirt came out in kind of like pre-modern metal history. It came out at a time when people were a bit blurry on the 80s. There was a new generation, and Motley Crue were like, oh, we could make ourselves the band of that era. And The Dirt came out, and there was a whole bunch of books coming out at the time that were all trying to outdo each other in terms of excess. And Neil Strauss, you know, you can say he ghostwrote it, but I mean, Neil Strauss masterminded it in the same ways he masterminded Marilyn Manson. I mean, that's Marilyn Manson's book also cemented Marilyn Manson's legacy by being out fucking rages. But I mean, those books, I say those books are a work of fiction. They're based in reality, but they're, I mean, even if you look at The Dirt, the movie, which then tried to, again, for a new generation, re-stamp their authority on an entire era, The Dirt, the movie, can't even agree with The Dirt, the book. It changes umpteen things just from the book. And that's assuming that you take the book at face value, which I absolutely don't. In both directions, I think there's stuff in the book that is wildly exaggerated and probably, if not completely fabricated, at least wildly exaggerated. But then also, I think one of the other things about The Dirt that bothers me about it is the stuff that didn't get into it for legal reasons. I mean, when you consider the things that are in there, the things that they just couldn't put in there, which I kind of touched on when I was talking about that Roadies compilation book where they couldn't name the bands, but they were describing dropping off young women at A&E that weren't breathing and things like that. And you just, there's something horrible and artificial and manufactured. And looking at Nikki Sixx, he admits that. I mean, he put that band together to succeed. I mean, there's some really interesting articles. There's I mean, we're talking about the book The Dirt. It's not the only book that's been written about Motley Crue or including Motley Crue. There was a book called No Sleep Till Sudbury, written by a journalist called Brent Jensen, and there's a Motley Crue chapter in that. I think it was subtitled Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and it was about Nikki Sixx. His real name's Francis. What's it? Francis Pereira. It just really laying out what Motley Crue actually was. So, like, to give you some cliff notes from that book, Motley Crue was only successful for two reasons. The first is because young people are so willingly prone to give in to their basest instincts. The second is because Nikki Sixx knows this. Nikki Sixx is a concept created by alter ego Frank Ferrana. It's not real, and neither was Motley Crue. Motley was a visual production accompanied by a musical soundtrack, a proto-Kiss regurgitation based on what he absorbed from them, and other acts, such as I said, Judas Priest and Saxon, that he placed on an equal or a greater emphasis on image as they did musical content. And you can see a lot of parallels in Motley Crue's kind of leather stuff as well with Judas Priest. Talks about how people were really into Tommy Lee, for example, at the time, because he played with a lot of flamboyance. He did loads of stick twirls and used to break his cymbals when he played live. So that gave him a bit of edge over their peers. So Tommy Lee's playing did help. He was in the marching band in school as a drummer. All right, okay. But it was more about getting people's attention, kind of the same way as the New York Dolls did, or Kiss did. Motley Crue was essentially, and this is in Brent Jensen's words, a rite of passage for postgraduate Kiss fans that were 14 and 83, and this is where, you know, Nikki Sixx hit the bullseye. As a Kiss fan himself, he knew it was a tried and tested formula, and it just needed a bit of tweaking for a new generation. So, you know, Gene Simmons breathed fire, Nikki Sixx lit his legs on fire, Gene Simmons spat blood, Mick Mars drilled blood on stage. And Jensen suggests that Motley Crue's not a heavy metal band. You know, Shout at the Devil only sounded the way it did to get your attention, and also to provide a kind of metallic backdrop to the image that Nicky Sixx had lifted from the guy that he played with in London, who went on to be in Wasp.
Lizzie Blackwell.
Blackie Lawless.
Blackie Lawless, sorry, yeah.
So I think it's interesting, the parallels. Like, the Motley Crue was a less ambitious artificial product. It was like somebody that saw what was going on in LA, wanted a slice of the pie, and put this thing together, bringing in Mick Mars, who was much older than Tommy Lee and all that stuff. So I think we can dispel to some extent with the notion that Kiss is a big stupid fake band and Motley Crue were the real deal, albeit they were out of control. I don't think Motley Crue were the real deal, and I think what they've done in hindsight, I don't dispute that they have a cultural legacy, but I think the cultural legacy, as much as Kiss were the masters of merchandising, Motley Crue were the masters of spotting the moment where they could write themselves into the history of that era in a much, much bigger way than I think they perhaps even deserved. Because, as I said, at the time, bands like Warrant, Rat, Hanoi Rocks, Wasp, Skid Row, Dio, Winger, Choir Boys, Faster Pussycat. We're all doing the same fucking thing.
Yeah, but they weren't selling as many records and they weren't co-headlining.
No, there were certain ingredients in that helped them, and definitely a couple of them were a couple of the songs, and a couple of them were
and also
theatrics.
Motley Crue literally just went out and killed some of those members.
Yes,
that will come up later on.
There is that. But yeah, so I mean, I don't want to suggest that I'm saying that the Motley Crue didn't have a cultural significance, but I think it's greatly exaggerated, and I think it's exaggerated.
Yeah, but the whole point is it's exaggerated, and it's like people are looking back at that era in the 80s, and they take Motley Crue as this touchstone of debauchery and
looking back.
Yeah, exactly.
Kiss,
but that's what cultural legacy is.
Yeah, but
is
Kiss,
looking back.
But I would say the difference is that Kiss were that touchstone at the time.
Yeah, but
no, admittedly, after Alive came out, Kiss became that touchstone. Admittedly, the first three albums of Kiss weren't a touchstone until they got retrospective success. But from that era of the likes of Destroyer for a good 3 or 4 years in the late 70s, and then a couple of moments in the 80s, Kiss were a contemporary cultural monolith. They were just. But what
I would
fucking
argue
huge.
is that in some ways I feel like it's Kiss. To people now, it's like, oh yeah, that's just let the kids play with the whole sort of kayfabe, is it kayfabe sort of thing. It's like Kiss have just been doing their thing and not actually that interested in it because I wasn't involved. So people that weren't into Kiss and aren't into Kiss are just like, they understand that was just kids playing about. Whereas Motley Crue still has a resonance for some reason to people that want to go back and look and go, well, that was fucking fucked up. Whereas the entire point of Kiss was that it was everybody was playing and it was a kind of a safe space. Whereas Motley Crue wasn't a safe space at all. It was a fucking horrible space.
Yeah.
And also,
I think we're really underselling how debauched and messy Kiss was. I think we're going to get to this in quite a way.
I would also say that Kiss within rock and roll were hugely significant and influential, and there's no doubt that a lot of bands in the 80s and 90s look back at Kiss, and even fucking Slipknot, were massively influenced by Kiss. But that's within rock and roll. But then you look at just mainstream popular culture, and Motley Crue are more influential, or not influential, but just get more headlines in newspapers.
The thing that strikes me about both bands is that both bands are very, very much in the business of creating their own mythology about themselves.
Very much so.
Absolutely.
That's a distinction I want to break down. Is that Motley Crue are any less guilty of that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but what I'd say is that like your whole starting argument was about the kayfabe and like creating that world that Kiss live in, and I think Kiss lived within that world, and that world became huge. Whereas Motley Crue weren't as clever as that, and didn't create that world, and therefore the mess they created seeped out into the real world much more.
There's a blurring of the lines of reality and fiction with a band like Motley Crue, because a lot of the lyrics I think are quite violent in that era, which was not unusual in the early 80s.
Can we have a lyrics round, by the way?
Yeah, but I'm going to leave it up to you guys, because I've only got Motley Crue ones, and not even that many, unless you've got some, Dave.
Got a couple, but
I think a lot of that, especially on the early records, the lyrics are quite violent, and they do talk about some of their experiences growing up and stuff like that, which I don't. Did Kiss really ever do anything like that? I couldn't.
I don't know if he did, but I mean, Paul Stanley had a genuinely rough upbringing.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that
Paul Stanley was like in gangs and getting slashed and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that like Motley Crue more overtly, probably not deliberately, there was a blurring of lines between reality and fiction, whereas Kiss have always come across as larger than life. And
Kiss arrived more fully formed, as we agreed from the start. I think they had a better sense of what they wanted to be, but we shouldn't downplay just how fucking off the rails they were as well.
Oh yeah, I mean we'll talk about
Frehley for a long time was the gold standard of absolute fucked upness. Like there were people in bands making a joke of like, yeah, he's off the rails, but at least he's not Ace Frehley off the rails. That, you know, this guy was fucking wild. So yeah, we shouldn't. I mean, admittedly, you know, Nicky Sixx gave him a good run for his money by dying, was it twice? But yeah, I just think that there's a lot of similarities. Like this notion that one is more authentic and more edgy than the other is not really.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say.
I think to put a cork in that, my argument there is simply that I think Motley Crue, what they've done is they've identified certain points where the collective cultural memory is fading enough that they've been able to insert themselves as the iconic band of that era. In 1984, were Motley Crue bigger than a lot of the bands around them? Not really, but in 1994, did Motley Crue seem like they were bigger? Yes, because they managed to cement that. And in 2004 and in 2020, you know, they've identified these junctures in the collective consciousness where good marketing, good teams, whatever, good luck, they've been able to write themselves in as the icons of that era, which doesn't really hold up, I don't think, for the people of that era. I mean, I would say a lot of people would say that Judas Priest were a bigger band than Motley Crue, but Judas Priest, to a lot of people, don't seem to have had that cultural prominence, and that's because Motley Crue were better at rewriting that. In terms of,
just to go back a little bit, in terms of bigness in the 80s, Shout of the Devil was the 19th biggest selling album of 1983, so they were definitely up there around about and then that's of all artists, it's not just like, you know, metal. The Dr. Feelgood 1989, 12th biggest selling album of the year, so they were huge.
But was that the biggest even metal selling album of that year?
I have no idea. It's just
and that's the other thing as well. That's 1989, and literally that style of music was about to die.
Yeah, it was.
Like Motley Crue took a long time to peak.
They did. I mean, that's
in that scene. There were other bands that crested in 86. Motley Crue were at 1989, which is right at the. I mean, Nirvana had already brought out fucking Bleach. Yeah. I mean, the letter was already in the post. You guys are fucking toast. You know what I mean?
That's one of the things people often talk about in Motley Crue, right? Is the fact that they did come quite late to the game with their biggest hits and most marketable. Was when they all got clean into this record, and that's a good story in and of itself, right?
That's like the Extreme era. That's like when Extreme and Ugly Kid Joe and fucking Poison and stuff were like getting really fucking huge. You know, it's like it's the end of that hair metal scene.
Every time I touch you get hot. I wanna make love, you never stop. Come up and pull me to the floor. What's been going on in here?
The point I was trying to make is I don't think one band is more authentic than the other. I think that, like I said, both bands are definitely in the business of creating mythologies for themselves. I do think in our present day the Motley Crue mythology is stronger, significantly stronger just because of time.
Because
it's closer.
Titillation as well, because as much as we live in a very evolved and woke era, like, people do love to fucking just dabble with a tale of excess, and that's what I find a little bit disturbing about Motley Crue's mythologising of themselves, because whilst some of it is deliberately engineered to be titillating and excessive and taboo, there's a lot of shit in there that, you know, is just not in there, that is way over the score, because it just couldn't legally be published.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing about them. Like, do we even know Motley Crue? I don't think Kiss were as good as at managing their own behind the scenes mythos. I mean, we actually, we'll I'm sure we're going to touch on it in this one coming up later, but the interpersonal shit in Kiss was a fucking absolute shit show.
Yeah, totally. That's a big
books
thing.
coming out right, left and centre, humiliating each other, and fucking interviews like, he's a fucking idiot, blah blah blah. Motley Crue, they kept the same guys. They had a much tighter ship in that respect.
I'd just like to have a little mic drop here, because I actually have the winning cultural legacy.
Go for it.
Methods of Mayhem.
I ain't getting paid to entertain the blood on showers, rocking my polo tape for hours and hours. Yeah, the noise is the therapy, it's bigger than Ron Jeremy. 'Cause it's the last street, raw ass week, and I've been running with the blue balls since last week. Come on, you ass.
Jesus.
Tommy Lee's rap rock project in the 2000s.
Wow.
I think that record featured Fred Durst, Crystal Method, Kid Rock, Snoop Dogg, Lil Kim, George Clinton, and Mixmaster Mike.
It's a Nexus dream.
It is. He left Motley Crue to do that project, which just tells you everything about the 90s, right?
Well, I
Is
think,
there any better legacy than that Methods of Mayhem record?
I think I can see your Methods of Mayhem and raise you, because Gene Simmons went out with Diana Ross for 2 years.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, but did they make a record together?
No, they didn't, but they made a lot of loving.
I think
Upside down.
it's a hard one to judge, because another thing which we haven't another thing we haven't discussed is I just got that. Another thing we have discussed it in the last episode, but we haven't discussed it in the context of this, is the sex tape. It's a massive, whether you want to talk about it as being,
Yeah, it's a
huge cultural milestone.
Yeah, totally.
It's absolutely fuck all to do with their paltry amount of good songs, but
we're talking about culture here.
Yeah.
Oh god.
I mean, even from the fucking cover of like Too Fast to Live, like they were immediately, apart from referencing the Rolling Stones, they were desperate to make it known that Tommy Lee had a wang.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a tough one.
Too Fast to Live, Too Fast for Love.
Too Fast for Love, yeah. It's a tough one. It is.
Well, you're the judge though.
I know.
Tough or not, you're going to have to make a decision, because this shit can't be a draw.
There have already been some draws. I think this one looks like it might be creaking towards it as well.
You better save a round as a tiebreaker, Mark, because if this ends up as a draw, we're going to have a penalty shootout.
We are, that's true. I think I need to call it as a draw.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
The only reason I say that
Get off the fucking fence, mate.
I think it's prudent to be in the fence in this one, because both bands have had like huge influences in different ways on culture. What?
I've raised my hand. I have one last thing to throw into your decision here. Which band do you think is responsible for spawning more bands? Because I would quite confidently say that Kiss win that.
I think you might be right on that one.
Yeah, okay. Which band do you think has been responsible for more
sex tapes?
for more relationships breaking up?
Actually,
I don't actually know.
That's a draw.
I don't actually know that one.
Come on, surely must edge that. I mean, Kiss, when you read anything by Henry Rollins, Ian MacKaye, any of the fucking punks from the fucking like the Washington scene, the fucking like New York scene, they fucking loved Kiss. The New York Dolls, Iggy, fucking all of them.
I mean, you're right, but something just came into my head. Sorry, I don't care about that shit. I've now come to decision. No, I've now come to decision. The marketing aspect of Kiss, I think, probably wins it for me, because I work in marketing and they're fucking great at that. And that is a mass. You just spoke about how
the dice were loaded from the start.
You just spoke about how many people were influenced by Kiss, including Nikki Sixx.
Absolutely, yeah. Totally.
And I think you can't have Motley Crue without Kiss. You can't have
Kiss without Motley Crue, because you did.
Yeah, he did. And I think they changed the game for how bands can market themselves and different revenue streams and all that. And
Just say,
Okay,
Dave.
I would say that these should be points that are getting taken off.
That's no.
Because when I listen to music, I'm not like, oh gee whiz, I wish I'd have a good flask of this.
Yeah,
Like,
it's true.
they are everything that's wrong with modern music.
Oh, yeah,
They
both
fucking
bands are.
poisoned.
Both bands are.
They just dripped commercialism. Like Kiss are the greatest rock and roll corporation of all time.
Well, but on the flip of that, man, metal bands are only kept afloat now by their merch sales, and they probably owe that to the world of fucking merchandising that Kiss helped create. So you know what, Dave? A good time to score is early in the second half, and I'm gonna take that point.
It's gonna get spicy in a second, though.
Okay, let's go.
So we've also
Right.
got 2 bonus rounds left, and there's only one that can come after this because the next round and the final bonus round are basically the same round. So, daftest lyrics.
Oh yeah!
Okay.
You want the worst? You got the worst. Yep. Yeah, I'm all set for this, but I mean, you guys can go first if you want.
I think Kiss has to go first because he came first.
Kiss. Right. Like as we said about the kayfabe thing, Kiss absolutely are hyper aware, and it's not even a secret how much they're aware of their own absurdity. Okay, and Exhibit A, my lud, is the song "Going Blind." Right, Going Blind's lyrics. When I first heard the Melvins cover, and I actually thought that Melvins had changed the lyrics to make it more silly, to kind of sort of tongue-in-cheek affectionately take the piss out of Kiss, but they didn't. The lyrics are I'm 93, you're 16. And the chorus, that refrain,
I'm 93 or 16, and I think I'm going blind.
totally embracing their fucking lascivious, stupid nature. But there's an even better lyric in that song, which is just so fucking self-aware and almost like properly like comedy writing, where it goes, little lady, can't you see, you're so young and so much different than I.
Little lady, can't you see? You're so young and so much different than I.
Didn't go for the obvious right there.
Exactly.
That.
Like it's
Sorry.
but it's just because it doesn't even fit in the meter.
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah.
And so much different than I. And you're just like, that is fucking wonderful. Like, I love the humour in that line.
Well, I mean, there's no humour here. On Slice of Your Pie, tattoo,
I've got this too.
tattoo crawling down her leg, so sexy, so young. Ever get caught, they'll arrest me.
Oh,
Schoolgirl study up well on hoochie coochie, lick lips, kitten with a whip, so undress me. Hey, pretty, pretty with sweet, sweet eyes, order me up and I'll slice your pie.
So young, never get caught, they'll arrest me. Schoolgirl, dirty up so well on hoochie coochie. Lick lips, kid with a whip, so undress.
Whiplash, I never looked at you in high school, hot girl, always walk behind you. For the rear view, good God, baby, blow my fuse when you walk this way. 19, seductive ballerina, so trashy.
19 seductive ballerina.
So trashy.
Why are ballerinas trashy? Ballerinas
He'll
aren't
be
trashy.
the blood in your eyes. He'll be the blood between your thighs.
Oh, it's about Satan.
Is that one of the 92 ones? Or
No, that's about.
that's on Shout the Devil.
It's about. I think that's specifically about Satan.
Yeah.
Now that's an interesting wrinkle, and that's going to come into a round, I think. Well, I'm sorry, you guys are really struggling here. So take me, put your hand in my pocket, grab onto my rocket. Let's put the X in sex. Don't need no doctor putting me to bed. Give me the nurse and I'll make sure that she's fed. The song Rock Hard. You make me rock hard, baby, all night. Love's like a glove and it fits just right. Okay, and the double entendre in Rock Hard is just fucking brilliant. Love Gun. Come on, I mean, Love Gun, for fuck's sake. No place for hiding, baby, no place to run. You pulled the trigger on my love gun. Any way you slice it, why settle for second when you can have the best? Let me be your king bee. I want your hornet's nest. Doesn't even make any fucking sense.
Hornets kelpies.
My personal favourite is from a track called Burn Bitch Burn.
I got nasty habits. It's a fine line. So many girls, so many times. Love is intense.
Okay. Not a great song. But the lyric, gonna put my log in your fireplace. I mean, like, for everybody that's seen Spinal Tap, and they know the song Sex Farm, plowing
Working on a sex farm.
plowing through your bean fields trying to raise some hard love. Was it getting out my pitchfork, poking your hay?
Scratching in your head house. Sniffing at your feedback. Slipping out your back door. Leaving my spray.
I mean, this is exactly, Kiss were the bedrock of a lot of that film. There's more. Like a dog to a bone, I can make you sweat, I can make you moan. Love so sweet, so insane. So come on and lick my candy cane. There's so many mixed metaphors. That's from Gimme More. And the final one I would throw in is from Lick It Up. Don't need to wait for an invitation. You gotta live like you're on vacation. There's something sweet you can't buy with money. Lick it up. Woo! Lick it up. I mean, come on, Kiss win the terrible fucking lyrics round.
You didn't bring up Christine 16.
No, I didn't.
Which you need to bring up, mate.
No, but I don't want to lose points.
At this particular stage, I don't think Motley Crue can win points, to be honest.
No.
All in the name of rock and roll. She's only 15. She's the reason that I can't sleep. You see illegal. I say illegal's never been my scene. Oh yeah, I try like hell, but I'm out of control. Featuring the Dirt, featuring Machine Gun Kelly's verse. Give me more sex, more tats, more blood, more pain, more threats, more theft, torn jeans, cocaine, more pretty strippers with the big red lips, making big tits, showing off the big tits. Ha!
It's not very
Fuck
woke.
off, Machine Gun Kelly.
I mean, the Kiss one's boggin. It's boggin, but it's 2 years older than Iggy Pop's boggin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. True.
Can I cling on to that at least?
Saints Los Angeles, red line tripping on a landmine, sipping at the troubadour, girls passed out naked in the back lounge, everybody's going to score. She's all jacked up, she's down in her luck, you want it, you need it, the devil's going to feed it. That's from 2009.
What's that?
Saints of Los Angeles.
That's fucking Motley Crue in 2009.
That's an album about the dirt.
Okay.
So.
It's not really Motley Crue, but can I give you lyrics to Get Naked by Methods of Mayhem? This is Tommy Lee rapping.
Really I'm just trying to fly with the flows. Freak up some hoes, blow up the shows, make a little dough. As if you didn't know, back to the strip club, freaking out some hoes, swinging my ding-a-ling, and ain't no thing.
$77 million made from watching me come under the sun on my vacation after hours on Spectrovision shooting my jism in the Woody. The Woody has risen. I ain't getting paid to entertain your birthday showers. Rocking my porno tape for hours and hours. Clitorises are feeding me because it's bigger than Ron Jeremy. And then Fred Durst says, because it's them ass cheeks that make them ass weak. And I've been running. Oh, right. Yeah. Anyway,
is that a cover of the Carpenters?
Oh Jesus, this is difficult because Kiss obviously won with how ridiculous and funny the lyrics are.
Yeah, going to put my log in your fireplace.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like that. I think inspired a lot of the Spinal Tap.
I mean,
thing.
surely, clearly, Kiss get points, and I get points taken away.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
For just being illegal.
That's exactly what I was
rapists.
thinking, yeah. That's pretty much what I was thinking, to be honest, because, I mean, a lot of the lyrics are just really dull, you know, but when they do bad ones, sometimes they are quite bad.
So little misogyny points, though.
Misogyny points.
Well, I've got to claw them back here because I've just lost a bunch. How many members of Kiss have been female?
I see where you're going with this.
I don't want to be narrow-minded, but I would say probably none.
Well, yeah, Motley Crue have had one female member.
They're positively woke.
Well, that's
Modern.
surely a point.
Yeah.
I mean, they did. Tommy Lee was replaced by a female drummer.
Yes,
so.
Samantha Maloney was a drummer from about 2000 till 2004.
Did she go upside down?
I
Probably.
have no idea. Yeah, probably.
Did she have a big wang?
Probably.
Who knows? So that's that point claimed back.
Does Steve get a fucking hell, man?
Woke point.
A diversity point.
Okay.
So then I guess this is the round where it just all falls apart.
This is going to be a mess.
The denouement.
Can I preempt this round by saying that Paul Stanley was born with one ear?
If you want.
I just want petty points here because he was like, apparently his cartilage grew over, like his other ear is like grown over, like it's covered, like so he's got almost no hearing in it. So please just bear that in mind before we start talking about them as people. So he's technically disabled. So come on,
we're gonna do the final round, which is notoriety, madness, and lore. There's also a bonus round called biggest scumbag, which is going to be really hard.
Which is surely just
really hard to pull that apart, right? So let's. So I have some figures for this. If you want me to start off with my you've quote unquote objective,
quantified the fucking.
I have.
Oh my god.
Okay. First of all, in terms of controversy, right? No matter what you guys say, Motley Crue won it because Vince Neil literally killed a man in a car crash.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one.
And how many members of Kiss that are still alive have died?
How many members that are still alive have died?
Yeah.
Nikki Sixx. Yeah.
Nikki Sixx has died. That's also I actually have written that down as a point. Yeah, Nikki Sixx. How many members have died? Well, Nikki Sixx literally died. So yeah.
At least once.
We want to talk about potential cancellations though.
I don't want to talk about that at all.
I mean, cancellation's a very broad term, you know.
That's basically my way of saying notoriety. It's
you could be cancelled for Michael Jackson cancelled, as we discussed on our The Boys Get Cancelled episode, or you can be cancelled for Aziz Ansari cancelled. You know, it's not
cancelled. So biggest.
That was a different time, lads.
It was definitely a different time.
So I did joke in our group chat that we should just name this round Gene Simmons a case study, but there is a lot more to it.
There's way more to it. Aye, absolutely.
But he is particularly creepy as an individual.
So this isn't just though about individual creepiness. This is about lore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think I want to get a couple of things on the court record first. Mm-hmm. Okay. Knights in Satan's Service. Kiss. The rumour started apparently in the Bible Belt as a conservative religious reaction to this band doing these outrageous things and being really sex positive, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But the rumour started that KISS was an acronym of Knights in Satan's Service. Gene Simmons denies that's true, but actually admits that they deliberately let it linger because it was good for business. He's been quoted as saying, ironically, this rumour started as a result of an interview I gave in Circus magazine after our first album. In response to a question, I said that I sometimes wondered what human flesh tastes like. I never wanted to really find out, but I was curious intellectually. And later on, that comment ignited that whole idea that in some way KISS was aligned with devil worship, along with some of the sillier visuals. And he says, when I was asked whether I worship the devil, I simply refused to answer for a number of reasons. The first reason, of course, was that it was good press. Let people wonder.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty fucking decent. Like in the late 70s, that kind of harmless silliness, it reminds me a bit of like Iron Maiden as well, did something similar. It was quite panto, but you know, stuffy old folk were sort of really alienated and intimidated by it. I also think an interesting bit of lore is around their logo. We've spoken about this in the show as well.
Yes.
The KISS logo was designed with 2 lightning bolts as the SS, and it was thought to be remarkably similar to the SS, you know, the German Schwuss staff, or I can't can't remember what the fucking thing it stands for. In fact, their logo was actually banned in Germany in 1970s.
Yeah, they still can't use that logo in Germany. Mm-hmm.
Ace Frehley had actually drawn the logo, so it was a pure coincidence. But
Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons think he's anti-Semite, so
well, I think they think that in a kind of tongue-in-cheek way. But yeah, I mean, Gene Simmons' mum, Flora Klein, was actually in a concentration camp, and Paul Stanley's parents also fled Nazi Germany during the war. So I think that part of it is pretty fucking ridiculous.
Do you know that Paul Stanley went to a party in 1978 in a Nazi uniform?
Yes. And
how weird is that?
Apparently Paul Stanley said that Ace Frehley and Peter Criss dressed up as Nazi officers and banged on Gene Simmons's door in the middle of the night demanding to see his papers. So I mean, I think like the thing with Kiss, right, in terms of like egos and debauchery, they really don't seem to like each other that much. I think it's quite a different situation from Motley Crue, where they seem a bit more discreet. Even if they have conflicts, they seem a bit more discreet. Vinnie, as we mentioned earlier, Vinnie Vincent sued them fucking mental. Chris and Frehley have both said and been called a lot of things, and even Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley have said a fair bit about each other. Although, interestingly, I think it's Bruce Kulick, the guitarist that came in after Vinnie Vincent, says he still really likes meeting up with them for coffee and stuff, and they all get on great. So it's a weird nuanced thing. Like, we see it as being like an absolute war, but to them I think it's quite petty. On each other, according to Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons wasn't the genius everyone thought he was. He was merely the guy who took credit for the actions of a lot of other people. And in an interview, Stanley said that he'd like to get Gene Simmons headphones, a mirror and a microphone so he can watch himself talk all the time. And that's two guys that have been in this fucking band together the whole way through. So that is between them even at that. I mean, I would say, I mean, Dave, I'll cede the floor to you in a second, but I would say for all the things these guys have done, I mean, Gene Simmons, I think, has had at least 2 trials for sexual battery, sexual assault. I know I don't know what happened in the first one. The second one was thrown out of court. Tommy Lee literally knocked his girlfriend's teeth out of her fucking head, punched her as hard as he could in the face. You know, so that level of like physical domestic violence, I don't believe is documented in Kiss, or if it is, maybe I'll be. I haven't seen it to that extent.
You forgot Vince Neil as well, who's also been charged multiple times as of spousal abuse.
Well, please take the floor. Tell me a little bit about these guys.
Well, I mean, in terms of lore,
imagine having to try and defend.
I'm not defending. I'm going to lose points for all of this. So,
stem the bleeding.
I mean, there's literally just a flat that is famous because they lived in it, and it was just so disgusting and full of shagging and drugs and cockroaches and socks for toilet roll. And I mean, they had to go as long as possible without showering while still, getting groupies. I mean, just read the dirt. It's all there. Or read the stories about the things that misses out the dirt. But Motley Crue literally just stands for everything that is wrong with men.
Yeah, I mean,
to be honest,
there was the undercover cop incident when
so he went over and it was Nikki Sixx, wasn't it?
Nikki Sixx was defending the order of Lita Ford against Hells Angels, and Hells Angels turned out to be undercover cops, and they beat the shit out of Nikki Sixx because he fought them and put him in jail for it.
They
biting the head off the bat. They apparently
that was their fault.
That was their fault because Tommy Lee snorted a line of ants. And
Ozzy
Osbourne. Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne says he's got no recollection of that actually happening.
Yeah, Tommy Lee. Well, that's not surprising.
Ozzy Osbourne doesn't remember the 80s.
Yeah, on one hand that could be because he doesn't remember it. On the other hand, it could be because the dirt is full of made up bullshit.
And obviously, like we said, Nikki Sixx died, which you can't really go over.
Vince Neil was out driving very drunk with Razzie from Hannah Rocks.
He literally killed the guy.
And it was, Di Tommaso Pantera as well, a very cool car, and just fucking smashed it and killed him. And he got 18 days in jail. Well, he got 30 days and served 18 of it.
Talking about Pantera, talking about Pantera, Ace Frehley got a blowjob in front of Dimebag Darrell.
Nice. Brett Dimebag Darrell fucking loved that. Apparently during the recording of Shout of the Devil, Nicky Sixx was also involved in a serious car crash after like stealing a friend's Porsche, and it was actually Demi Moore that told him he had to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, which is quite a good nexus.
That is a good nexus. Ace Frehley got involved in a police chase. He says, I got pulled over and had a suspended license and had bumped the back of the car. The officer said license and registration. I said, one moment, it's right here in the glove compartment. I hit the gas and took off. That sparked the whole crazy thing. He had basically evaded the forces for a while, and they eventually caught up to him. He was driving a fucking DeLorean. I think it was a white DeLorean, and was charged with drunken and reckless driving, but got released on a $500 bail.
Amazing.
500. Even I could get out a fucking $500 bail. He had a gang youth like Ace Frehley, guns put to his head, got in some really bad fights. Yeah, I mean, that guy, I mentioned it earlier on, Ace Frehley was like a gold standard of fucked up in the like late 70s, 80s. Like, until some of the names that we're talking about came on the scene, people would say, oh, he's in a bad way, but at least he's not as bad as Ace Frehley, you know. Yeah, as you said, he wore Nazi paraphernalia despite being in a band with like some very fucking Jewish people. Published a memoir in 2012 that has a lot of stories in it that, you know, because he's not as invested in the band to this day, seem like a bit more credible than I would say some of the stuff in the dirt.
Well, Motley Crue injected Jack Daniels into their veins.
Ace Frehley nearly went blind because he met up with some supermodel and got so fucked up, but there was metal in his face paint and it bled into his eyes, and he had to go to hospital. Yeah.
Motley Crue were kicked off the Kiss Creatures of the Night tour by Gene Simmons because they had quote unquote bad behaviour.
I mean, in fairness though, we'll get to Gene Simmons, but Gene Simmons, all of this shit happened and Gene Simmons was fucking teetotal.
Yep.
Gene Simmons, this is the thing that, I mean, to be fair, I don't want to bring out my big swinging Tommy Lee dick here, but Gene Simmons did all of this shit
sober,
nothing in his system, right? I mean, that's
maybe
fucking wild. Imagine what he'd have done if he was on.
Yeah.
Well, that's maybe what you have to choose between is like the unbelievable amounts of cocaine and heroin that Motley Crue took and killed people and killed themselves and did all these things and, you know, just did horrendous things to women and everything, but they took so much drugs. But then your counter argument is that Gene Simmons was sober.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great argument to have to go to, but like you mentioned Peter Criss as well, Mark. So like he smashed a champagne bottle and threatened to stab Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons was super critical of people that were mega wasted. I think Criss and Frehley called drunks and losers, and they were far from the only ones he had issues with. People he performed alongside for years who were just too fucking high and too drunk to actually do their job properly. So I'm not surprised that Motley Crue got punted off a tour. Peter Criss said that the Hotter Than Hell album, the photo shoot for it descended into like full on group sex. Paul Stanley was basically just taking it from like anybody, male or female, that was around him. Although his ex-wife, Chris's ex-wife Lydia, said that actually didn't happen. Chris also says that Ace Frehley gave him a blowjob, which again his wife I think denies. But yeah, I mean, Peter Criss was a fucking absolute riot and got kicked out of the band for being just far too far off the deep end. Yeah,
you want to hear a bit of a story about Van Halen and Motley Crue?
To it.
So guitarist Eddie Van Halen was bitten by Vince Neil during a dinner, and Tommy
during dinner.
Yeah, and this was
maybe he just missed.
Apparently at the same time, at the same dinner, Tommy Lee also bit Malcolm Young for AC/DC. Van Halen and Malcolm Young were really, really furious over the behaviour, and Tommy Lee ended up getting involved in a fist fight with David Lee Roth, which they were at the Monsters of Rock festival, and Motley Crue ended up getting kicked out of the hotel because of this. They actually demanded to the promoters that they remove Motley Crue from the bill, but they were so fucking popular that the promoters were like, we're not going to do that. So the promoter decided to come up with an unusual solution. Motley Crue would enter their trailer immediately upon arrival at the concert venue, and a large crane would then lift the trailer several metres off the ground to prevent the band members from leaving and causing trouble prior to their performance.
Oh my God.
They would also be required to leave the concert venue immediately after the performance. Their manager basically said this resulted in him having to pay a $15,000 deposit before any hotel would allow the band to stay.
That is fucking wild.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Basically, he also established a rule in which each band member would need to submit to him a list of all the things they had destroyed in a hotel before they had allowed them to check out.
So before we actually get to Gene Simmons, which I could, the writing's on the wall here, Vinnie Vincent, we mentioned, came in for just over 2 years. He was the Ankh Warrior, but they also sometimes call him the Wizard. He had that kind of Ankh symbol on him. Do you know he wrote music for Happy Days before he joined Kiss?
Amazing.
Great guitarist, better than Ace Frehley, similar style but better. Really improved their musicality. Ended up suing Kiss 14 times for various things, yet somehow came back in 1992 and contributed to the Revenge album. So you sue them 14 times but still able to bury the hatchet. That's what I don't get. It's just, to us on the outside, we're like, these guys must really want each other to die, and then they just get back in a room and, for business sake, do this thing. And
I think a lot of people in Hollywood, especially rich people, just see lawsuits as like a thing. It's not really like, it's not a personal attack, it's just something that you do.
It definitely feels very counterintuitive, doesn't it? So, I mean, I guess this is where we bridge into the bonus round, right?
Yeah, because I've got one here called Number of Shite Opinions, and it's a big -1 because it's Gene Simmons, who's a world class piece of shit. That's what I've written here.
I think he's a more interesting guy than we give him credit for. But yeah, there's no denying he's.
No, I don't think anybody's doubting that he's interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want me to, I'll talk about some of the things I've got here, and then you can chuck your stuff in. So I said earlier on in the last episode, all he wants to do is get paid and get laid. That's his mantra for Kiss.
That's Paul Stanley's as well. I mean,
when file sharing was a big thing, he sued a couple of them into complete oblivion, ruining people.
He was bad.
He's called.
But on the bright side, though, Anonymous targeted him.
Yeah.
Anonymous went after Gene Simmons on multiple occasions and DDoS'd his fucking site out into oblivion. However, one of the boys that did it for Anonymous got caught, and Simmons tried to have him prosecuted to the full extent of the law, which at one point was something like fucking 7 years in jail. But I think the boy ended up getting a suspended sentence. But he really went after them big time. But he got targeted by Anonymous as a result.
He thinks he's on record as saying Islam is a vile religion, and then he later changed his opinion.
He qualified that
by saying he's only really talking about religious extremists,
radicals.
However, he's really gung-ho on the fact that Israel keep bombing the fuck out of Gaza, so I don't know how much of that is actually going to be legit or not.
Yeah, I mean, my opinions on Israel and Palestine, it's a far more fucking complicated thing than we're ever going to discuss here in any proper and do it any kind of justice. But I mean, Gene Simmons was born in Israel. He lived there until he was 8 years old. He fucking grew up there living on rationed milk and bread, and his childhood in Israel was not some fucking illustrious privileged existence, you know what I mean?
And basically he said a few things over the years, different things about like mental health and his kind of general sort of shitty attitude towards it. He's on record as saying,
a bad one, yeah.
He's the guy who'd tell people to jump if they were threatening to commit suicide by jumping off of a building. I've got the quote
here. Simmons on depression. For a putz 20-year-old kid to say I'm depressed, I live in Seattle. Fuck you then, kill yourself. I never understand because I always call them on their bluff. I'm the guy who says jump when there's a guy on top of a building who says that's it, I can't take it anymore, I'm going to jump. Are you kidding? Why are you announcing it? Shut the fuck up, have some dignity and jump. You've got the crowd. By the way, you walk up to the same guy in a ledge who threatens to jump and put a gun to his head. I'm going to blow your fucking head off. He'll go, please don't, it's true. He's not that insane. So yeah, definitely not great chat. Funnily enough, in the Kiss versus Crue battle, Nicky Sixx responded.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Nicky Sixx has had his own issues with mental health over the years, and he actually came out basically calling him a piece of shit until we fuck off.
Got that quote as well. It's pretty moronic because Simmons thinks everybody listens to him, that he is the god of thunder. He will tell you he's the greatest man on earth, and to be honest with you, I like Gene, but in this situation I don't like Gene. I don't like Gene's words. There is a 20-year-old kid out there who's a Kiss fan and reads this and goes, you know what, he's right, I should just kill myself. And you know what, fucking Nicky Sixx bizarrely showing himself to be the sort of smarter man in that situation. Some other details on Gene Simmons. Do you have any more to add?
No, have me.
Gene Simmons made a Reporter Movies Iron Maiden t-shirt before he would continue.
I heard about that. Yeah, heard about that.
Gene Simmons did a very famous interview with a woman called Terry Gross, which is the interview
the
very
NPR.
gross,
Yep.
really arrogant, really sexist. But in saying that, when you read that interview actually verbatim, I doubt very, very much he's saying things that I think maybe just other rock stars of that era had the common sense and maybe not quite the ego to actually say. I don't think anything he's saying is shocking to anybody that knows about 70s and 80s rock bands, but it's definitely shocking that he actually says it to the host. He has, as we said, a less than impressive sex tape. He apparently tried to collect a photo of every woman he'd ever slept with, which is apparently over 5,000 to date. He's banned from Fox News. Or he was banned from Fox News after a conversation. It takes some going, right? Yeah. After a conversation about Harvey Weinstein, where he said, "Okay, I'm a powerful and attractive man, and what I'm about to say is deadly serious. Men are jackasses. From the time we're young, we have testosterone. I'm not validating or defending it. Hey chicks, sue me." And then he fucking pulled open his shirt. What a fucking turd. And also apparently on his way out the building touched several employees, tapping their heads in a gesture that questioned their intelligence. So I mean, he's got a pretty long rap sheet. As I said, he called the other band members drunks and losers, sexual harassment accusations. What I think is going to put the fucking nails in my coffin is that it's going to be impossible for the judge to be objective here, because Gene Simmons called Prince's death pathetic. Because
it was a pretty pathetic way to go, I guess.
Holy fuck. There you go. I didn't lose my point. I will say that Ace Frehley has also pointed out in that aforementioned book that Gene Simmons hates showering as a super stinky dick, and Gene Simmons has replied, "What does showering have to do with being a responsible human being?" Because that's what we think he is. What else? That's what makes you an asshole, because you don't shower. Okay, you win. And also there's the story about how Gene Simmons had pubic lice and then modified it to say that all the band members had it, but they were sharing groupies. So in his I should never be saying that.
Don't do it, man.
In his tiniest defence, and it's very qualified even at that, in a 2010 interview in Classic Rock, Gene Simmons on Michael Jackson, there's no question in my mind he molested those kids, not a doubt, when that was not entirely a fashionable opinion, albeit in saying that, in 2011, Kiss were kicked off a Michael Jackson tribute concert because somebody found out what Gene Simmons had said. I cannot even square that circle, so Mark, do as you will.
Well, okay, so obviously not as many shit opinions, but Vince Neil was arrested in 2002 for punching record producer Michael Schumann, ordered to pay restitution and undergo community service. In 2003, he was arrested again after he had assaulted a sex worker, pleaded no contest battery charges, 30-day suspension. 2004, arrest warrant for misdemeanor assault. 2007, suspicion of DUI. 2010, suspicion of drunk driving. 15 days under house arrest. 2011, charged with battery and disorderly conduct after an altercation with his ex-girlfriend. 2015, he was sued for fraud over investments in a football team. He was also cited for violating daily water cap at his home.
Yeah. Like water in his lawn or something.
Yeah.
A hosepipe ban.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, he said Motley Crue did need a hosepipe ban, but I mean that as a metaphor.
He was fined $150,000 for the amount of water he used. He's charged for misdemeanor battery assault of a woman in Las Vegas. So, these are all pretty bad things. And he killed a fucking man.
Yeah. So a guy from a band that was very successful.
So maybe not the opinions, but it truly has the actions to back it up in terms of scumbag.
Mark, I'm sure you were making frenzied adjustments to your scorecard during that.
So actually, I had pretty much played to what I had, to be honest. So, and that brings us to the end. We kind of rolled in our biggest scumbag.
Yeah. Well, we've got closing arguments, so right.
I mean,
yeah.
It's not going to change the score, but yeah, sure, do it.
I mean, I'm talking to the audience at this point, right? So I want to acknowledge that Kiss are arguably more thirsty. I mean, Motley Crue were derivative, but Kiss were more thirsty and followed more trends shamelessly, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, both acts debased themselves on later albums following grunge and stuff like that, and new metal even. It's not purely a Kiss phenomenon, but the Kiss stuff is more erratic in terms of style. But I think given how monolithic that LA metal scene, that Sunset Strip metal scene was, is it then ironically kind of easier to identify Kiss tunes as a result? I think it probably is. I think they've got really very, very iconic songs to their name, and I'm not saying the Motley Crue don't have big singles, but I think to the layperson it'd be harder for them to be like, who is that? Is that Poison? Is that this? Is that band? Kiss songs tend to sound are very, very easily associated with Kiss. So is Kiss a better prospect for non-metalheads, or, you know, your average punter? I think it definitely is. The sound's less specialised and maybe has more of a broad appeal. It's more classic rock than sort of 80s hair metal, and the songs span so many styles that I think it's more likely that somebody will like one or two than if you just don't like the Motley Crue sound, you won't like the Motley Crue sound. Motley Crue, the opposite side, more of a focused sound, more a consistent sense of identity, definitely, but really derivative of a trend and a scene and a sound at that time, very calculated. I think that's something that people just don't quite appreciate, is how savvy an enterprise Motley Crue was and how constructed it was, right down to the lore and the books and the fucking, you know, the fake narratives and Neil Strauss helping them build a mythos, all that stuff. Do Crue songs sound more samey to the untrained, the unfamiliar ear? I think they probably do. Forget the famous titles, purely on their merits. Crue sound like so many of those other bands, Warrant, Hanoi Rocks, Skid Row, Faster Pussycat. As I said, except that Kickstart My Heart is a great piece of work, really standout song of that era. Comparing greatest hits collections, I think Kiss win. Even the ones that don't factor in some of the better 80s stuff. Again, I want to suggest Turn On The Night, which I just think is a really overlooked classic Kiss tune, classic 80s tune in fact. We agree. Neither of these bands can do a ballad worth a fuck. They are absolutely fucking horrendous. I mean, I don't think that Motley Crue even invented Motley Crue. I think Motley Crue is this sort of marketing result of all these different influences that went before. Very well executed in the end, but not original. I don't think Kiss ever did an album as bad as Generation Swine. I think the Motley Crue self-titled album is pretty shameful as well. Crue in 83 are years behind Judas Priest. They're like an early tribute to Priest. And yeah, I don't think there's much about them that really merits them having that iconic status, other than that they've been able at certain windows to cement themselves via this kind of mixture of truths and half-truths and speculation about what they got up to as the avatar for 80s metal excess. I don't know if they necessarily are that. Okay, Dave.
Alright, well, I think the main thing for me is that I just hate glam rock compared to glam metal. I hate...
Hey, you agree though that the early Motley Crue stuff is very glam? Like, I mean, the Too Fast for Love,
they're always a glam band,
like,
yeah.
It's like T-Rex at points, man.
I think they have.
Yeah, but
They've more in common with the metal or Judas Priest, would you not say, than they do with like rock, glam rock.
yeah,
Kiss.
when I listen to Kiss, I hate that that 70s aesthetic and its cheesiness and its seediness. I fucking hate Slade, and I hate T-Rex, and I hate Gary Glitter, and I hate David Bowie.
But Kiss sound at times more like Sabbath than they do maybe the early stuff, especially Going Blind and She.
Do you know what I can't get out of my head when I listen to Kiss and stuff like that is the Brass Eye song, the pedo Brass Eye song. Playground, bang around, bang a little boy.
That's way closer to Motley Crue than it is.
No,
to
it's
Kiss.
not. That is exactly Kiss or T-Rex.
No way, man.
Pretty much.
No way.
Hits like Playground Bang Around.
Turn right inside, turn little boy on the slide, little girl on the swing.
As I sing the whole thing.
Playground, bang around, bang a little boy
I mean, like Motley Crue are a glam hair metal band. They're glam metal. Like Kiss are
But I'm a
classic rock.
metalhead, so to me, I just connect with their better songs better than I do with Kiss. I think Kiss, I've seen my whole life. They've been there. They are this cultural, figurehead in terms of rock and roll. They're an iconic rock and roll band, one of the best-selling bands of all time. And when I just listen to it, I'm just always disappointed. I think it's slower. I think it's less glitzy. I think I want more glam shit when I listen to Kiss.
Yeah, exactly. You want more glam shit, and that glam shit is in Motley Crue.
Yeah, exactly.
They're glam.
So I think Kiss are the ultimate. To me, they're just the ultimate gimmick. They're the kings of everything but the music. They're, as I say, I don't think they're the greatest rock and roll band ever. I think they're the greatest rock and roll corporation ever. Maybe. And I think that's what Kiss are. And to me, when I listen, I think Kiss should be all about fun. And maybe they are to people who, I don't know, like wrestling and pickup trucks. But when I listen, and not watch, but when I listen, I just think it's dry. I think it's slow. I think it's bland. And whereas to me, if I'm driving in the car and I want to pretend I'm driving through California in the 80s, I'm going to put on fucking Motley Crue. If I want a little bit of escapism or something like that, a total guilt-free nostalgia of a life that I didn't lead, I'm putting on one of the 8 good Motley Crue songs, and I'm not ever listening to Kiss because I just simply don't like them, and I think they are not great at music. So that's my closing statement.
Well, my nerves are jangling now.
Chris, you said earlier that Motley Crue, this was in our little Facebook group, you said it's East 17 meets Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
Well, I think Kiss are just Slade meets the Ultimate Warrior.
Which of those sounds better? That's up there. Well, let's find out.
All right.
The final
total
scores,
up
yeah.
those numbers.
Okay. Out of all the things we've done, Kiss have 5 points.
How do they have 5 points? We've been going for 3 hours.
Yep, I know. And Motley Crue have 4.
Yes!
Well, I'm not going to argue. I think it's wrong.
It's for the ages, Dave. It's for the fucking ages.
To be honest, I'm proud of my boys because we were underdogs.
There's more minus points in this than there were plus points. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, wait, there can't be if it's +5.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we've broken maths.
Yeah. It's really broken the universe.
Now, obviously it started off with a lot of plus points with things like, record sales and commercial legacy and all that, and then a lot of minuses came in after that.
Oh, I believe that. I mean, I think we were quite honest. I think David and myself both volunteered some of the fucking strongest arguments against our own candidates.
Yeah.
But the thing is, right, if you'd asked me before we started researching the episode, let's say out of 5, I would have said it'll be 5-2 to Kiss. But the more I researched it, the more I was like, no, this is going to be really tight. Because especially when I saw the sales, and I was like, fuck me, man, Kiss are nowhere, like the no album number ones, the no single number ones thing, I was like, this is bad.
Well, I simply came here on a contrary hot take and nothing else, and I've managed to claw a 5-4 defeat out of it. I was not expecting that, so thanks, Motley Crue. You've done me proud.
I think that was a good old time,
Dave's
right?
the Saudi Arabia of Firman.
Yeah, I know. The underdogs that you don't like you actually, but
I do want to root for them. No, they're awful. All right, Mark, thanks for administrating that in such a responsible way.
A good fun time, right?
Yeah.
A good fun time, and a good way to spend our 5th birthday.
Absolutely. You know what's not such a wholesome time? The Christmas special.
That is the best time though.
The Christmas special is that with the gloves off. Like if that was an adjudicated boxing match with like an audience and a ring, the Christmas special is 2 drunk old tramps in a back street
fighting weasels.
with weasels and broken jig bottles and people like screaming them on that are holding Lidl bags.
Yep. Yeah, can't wait for it.
Yeah.
So get your questions in for that. Is that correct?
Well, it's next week. week. So it's going to be our next episode. So we've probably recorded it by the time this goes out.
All right, okay.
If the stars have aligned, otherwise we're really going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Yeah. This episode comes out on our 5th or close to our 15th.
Pray for us. Pray for us that you hear from us again in the second week of January 2023.
God bless.
So we're looking forward to the Christmas episode. Hopefully you are as well. We've not done it yet as of recording, so we don't know what fucking chaos is ensued, but I'm sure it'll be fun nonetheless.
How many of us are there going to be?
4. Vicky's
Vicky.
joining us. Yeah.
Okay.
She feels she needs to make up for the shambles of last year.
Well, gosh.
Who's going to be the shambles this year? I wonder.
I think it's got to be me. I still haven't been the shambles
Yeah,
yet.
I've done my shambles.
Yeah,
man.
I'll be the shambles. It's fine.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm taking a safety helmet for that one.
Go to paypal.com/unsungpod if you want to donate money to Weaver's Getting Bucky Fund.
Yep.
Or Weaver's bail.
Or his bail. Aye.
See you on the other side.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.